Thank you, Jedi Master, for your advice. Talking to, of course, Eric Emery, our producer here, giving helpful advice on how to do the show better.
That's right.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. You are listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're broadcasting from the Concierge Landscape Studios. We're brought to you this hour by Extreme Exteriors and American Family Insurance, the Kim Bennett Agency. If you're just joining us, we're talking about an opinion piece from the Denver Post talking about what the state of Colorado needs is an HOA court. There have been a number of states around our country who have instituted an HOA court or ombudsman office to deal with complaints from individuals who live in homeowner associations.
That's right.
And we've talked about that subject so many times before.
That's right. What's interesting about this piece is his conclusion is, regardless of what the outcome is with licensing or regulation in the state of Colorado, he doesn't care how that turns out. He still thinks there's a need for an HOA court.
Yes.
But he starts out his opinion discussing whether or not association managers should be licensed, specially trained, or if there's just regulation needed of the management companies,
yes.
right?
And maybe he's feeling that is the real cause because of the lack of training and development there. Then those people who are managing don't deal with the homeowners correctly, and therefore the need. They
end up in
and maybe there's that thought pattern. Yeah. I don't know that he tied that well together.
I agree. I agree.
But let's talk about that other issue. Is that something that is necessary? He's talking about. He said last November, a few months ago, the Colorado Legislative Action Committee. And now the Legislative Action Committee is a department or a subset of the Community Associations Institute.
Right.
CAI, of course, as our listeners know, is a national organization. They have state chapters. We have one here in Minnesota.
It's a professional organization for management of associations, but also for homeowners associations and boards.
That's right, and vendors that also serve those communities as well. And he was concerned because he said the Legislative Action Committee, he thought, kind of went above their bounds and their responsibility because they approached DORA, which is the Department of Real Estate for Colorado, and they were requesting a determination, asking a question whether or not community association managers should be licensed in our state. And he was taken aback by that action. Because he said, first of all, the LAC did that without really going to the members of CAI to
Colorado,
see if they want to do that.
Yeah.
Why would he be that upset that they didn't go to the members first? Oh, I can tell you, anytime you begin asking questions of state organizations or departments, one of the things that it does is it creates interest where there may not have been interest before.
It brings the scrutiny of the state.
That's right.
On the issue. And so it seems that the writer is concerned about that, and he doesn't think the Action Committee, Legislative Action Committee was acting in the best interest of all the members.
Exactly.
Because they didn't canvass all the members.
Yes. And I think CAI's position has always been to not be active in change in the legislative process only when something comes up, then responding to it.
Sure.
Because I think there's a little bit of maybe the idea that the government that governs best is the one that governs least. I think that was Thomas Jefferson who said that, and I think that's probably something that's a philosophy you and I both
agree with. That's right.
Yeah, very much so.
So this action committee, is not trying to create policy or create new legislation. The Legislative Action Committee is just there to respond to proposed regulation and legislation and to try and make it as reasonable as possible for its members.
Yeah, and so let's take a look. What was it that DORA then concluded? Because they began a 5-month study and investigation of this issue. DORA came away saying that they have concluded that an alternative to manager licensing would be more appropriate and effective in the goal of protecting the public. And so they feel that there's a greater good. And I do agree that there are times when government is needed in terms of protecting us from further harm or from something that something that would be deleterious to us. So when you talk about the ideas of monopolies and things of that nature, yes, there's a need for certain legislation, but by and large, I think we certainly believe in a free market, which says that you can allow the market to really dictate the needs.
Right.
I think that same thing could happen here if people understood and believed that. Number one, I don't think that this idea of an additional licensing, this is just specifically not for all property managers. This is just for managers of a homeowner association.
Interesting. And didn't you tell me that Colorado already requires that property management companies carry a real estate license?
Exactly.
Just like the state of Minnesota. We are licensed.
Yes, we're very similar in that regard. If you're going to manage or sell property for a fee,
that's right,
you need to have
a real estate license. So he's talking about something in addition. He's saying that managers need to be licensed and trained just in association management.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, what do you think of the idea?
Well, I think continuing education is important no matter what your trade or industry is. In order to stay abreast of what's going on, in order to serve your customers in the best possible way, I think you should continue getting education in your field. And we certainly do that at New Concepts. Each of us managers are individually licensed realtors, and we have to get our 15 credits every year, and it keeps us in the know as to what's going on.
You know what's interesting? We're a member, of course, of the Institute of Real Estate Management, IREM, CAI, Community Associations Institute, the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association, and you know what? All three of those are organizations that deal with professional property management.
That's right. Commercial, rental, homeowner associations,
And what's interesting is I see our competitors in all three organizations.
That's right.
Just like we are. and what that tells me is that in a free market society, the market dictates that. Because as an owner of a company, do I want an employee who's going to mislead a homeowner, who's going to cause greater cause or concern? No, I want them trained.
That's right.
My competitors want that too. Why? Because they want to keep a client. I want to keep a client.
That's right.
And so this idea that it's needed, or the idea that business is just careless and really doesn't care, it is because of that self-interest that is built in a free market that causes there to be a proper tension and an ability to want to be a better company, because if you're not, the consumer is going to go somewhere else.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So while I greatly value training, education, licensing, I'm proud of my licensing, I don't think it's necessary to keep heaping more and more licensing requirements.
Yes, because all that we're doing, and because the other side, flip side that we see is when a government does that, be that a federal government, a state government, a city government, you end up adding on a bureaucracy. Yeah. You end up adding layers of people who do not relate or talk to one another.
Yes.
And you end up having something that becomes more oppressive and is not helpful at all.
And in addition, more difficult to deal with and negotiate, and the piles of paperwork that are added, the piles of work that your management company has to do, that increases. It increases costs.
How about
doesn't it?
Yes. You think of all of the states, and we've talked about a number of them on the show in the past, who have had this ombudsman office.
Yeah.
All of them have said the same thing. Fees have gone up, and people have been upset. And we've had them on our people on the show saying that it's become more of a bureaucracy.
That's
people
right.
aren't thinking, and it wasn't what they wanted. It didn't give them utopia.
That's right. We've talked to several people who really politicked and campaigned for an ombudsman office in their state because they thought it would give them individually what they wanted in their homeowners association.
Yeah.
And what happened was the ombudsman started effectively looking at governing documents, looking at state statute, and coming out with answers and decisions that complied with documents, contract law, and state statute. And the individuals who wanted things to change or wanted things their way were left unsupported.
And they weren't happy at the end of the day
like
still.
That. That's right.
Yes, and then the idea of there not being licensing, there is licensing with the real estate broker's license that is required, so you do know where that company or corporation is and how to deal with them if there are issues or concerns. Well, one concern we have right now is we've got to take a break. But when we come back, we're going to be dealing with questions from our listeners.